Basil McCrea, the UUP spokesman on education.
And Basil, what do you think is the biggest challenge facing education in Northern Ireland at the moment?
Well, from an administrative point of view, one of the key problems is we don't have enough money. We'll have no capital spend we're talking about over the next 5 years. And with the cuts that are in process, I think we're going to have redundancies, probably forced redundancies, and probably forced compulsory closure of schools.
But all public services are working in a context of dire financial circumstances. So how would you address that problem in terms of education?
Well, I think it's coming now to the fact that we're going to have to find a way of sharing resources. It's simply, although we've had reports in the past, there's always been a tendency to keep as diverse a school estate as possible. And frankly, we're getting to the stage where it just isn't possible financially. Now, it's not necessarily the case that you have to bring schools together to merge into super schools, but you do have to work out, does every school need a swimming pool? Not that every school does have, but does every school need a science department? Does every school need a music department? Does every school need to offer the entire range of services? Or would there not be some way of having a collaborative working together? And I think that's what we're looking for in the future.
And beyond the financial question, how big a part do you think shared and integrated education could play in building a more peaceful and cohesive future for Northern Ireland?
Well, I personally am committed to integrated education. I believe it is the long-term solution for the issues that face Northern Ireland. But I do understand that there are other different opinions out there, that the difficulty with education is that you try and use it as a policy tool to solve all sorts of problems. Reconciliation of the population is one, but also people talk about environmental issues or education issues themselves, or even just value for money issues in terms of money. So you have to win the battle with the public that this is the appropriate way to be spending your education budget.
But getting back to budget, I was thinking more in terms of the social effect. Is the segregated, as it's been called, education, or the sort of sectarian education system, as it has been labelled by some people, is that contributing to a divided society or a product of it?
Well, absolutely. If you do not meet with people from different backgrounds, then they will be strangers to you, and you know, many people don't meet people from a different background until they are over the age of 18, for example, when they're at work or they're at college or whatever. But the problem we do have is that many of our population live in areas that are highly segregated. You know, I think it's 90% of people live in areas where 90% of the people are from the same background. And so you have this issue as well about wouldn't it be good to go to your local school, and doesn't that support your own culture and whatever. So I personally am of the belief that increased collaboration and working together is the way to go forward. And as the population itself tends to mix, then the schools should reflect that. So it is an evolutionary process rather than a revolutionary one for me.
But you talk about 90% of an area's population being from one tradition, but is it right to publicly fund a school that isn't open to 100% of the local population? Why should we bus 10% somewhere else?
Well, exactly. It's the busing issue is the problem, is that if the school reflects the local intake, the only way you could change that is if you were to bus people in from other areas. You know, if you said, to back up with a quota that said, you know, we need to have, let's say, 30% minority participation. That's social engineering, and busing didn't work when they tried it in America, and it won't work here. You have to convince people of the argument about this is a good school, this is why we would want to send our children to the school. And you know, whenever I declare my support for integrated or integrating education, it is on the basis that I have to go and win the argument with the population, and it takes time, and I need to assure them that it will be for the best interest for everybody, and that it's not leaving people behind. And it's quite a big job to do, but it's the right way forward.
But beyond quotas that you mentioned, is there an argument that we shouldn't be giving public money to schools unless they are demonstrably welcoming to all sections of society?
Well, you can have. In my experience, it is not that schools are not welcoming. It is that they have a strong ethos that is particularly welcoming to a certain section which almost by default means that they may not be as attractive to other sections.
That's why I said demonstrably welcoming. They should actually make some effort to reach out and be actively inclusive.
Well, you see, I look. Yes, that you want to be inclusive. That you want to build a shared future, but you have to realise the challenge for us is that the political framework isn't there. That what happens here in Stormont is that there is a shared out future, not a shared future. It is two political blocs that believe in you look after yours and we look after ours, and when we need to fight over resources, then we'll do that. You have to win the political battle first before you can engage the educational policy, to support that policy. And you also have to, not just with the politicians, but you have to win over the electorate, because there are as many people that want a secular education that is religion doesn't play any part in it, or culture doesn't play it, as people that say no, actually we value both traditions equally and we want to try and bring schools together. So there's a huge variety of opinion about what's the way forward. And I just do want to make this point. The issue is about parental choice. Parents are best placed to decide what is in the best interest of their children.
Well, exactly, because so many surveys have actually shown that parents actually want to see more integrated schools available. And is that going to be important to your party as the election approaches in terms of campaigning and manifesto? What you get is highly localised issues. Everybody talks in principle about wouldn't it be nice to do this, but when it comes to the stage of you're going to have to close my school, and people say, well, I don't want you to close my school. People are welcome to come to my school. Why should you close it? Or you get the stage where a school does close, and instead of populations going to the majority tradition school next door, they travel 15 miles to go to a school that is of theirs. That is an issue about planning, and we have various tensions in the system to do with open enrolment, to do with area-based planning. And what I do detect is that people realise that money is not growing on trees, and that they will come along and say, if we can have a solution that we're engaged with, if we have an informed debate, then I think people will sign up to it. And that's where I would be wanting to take the political debate, informed discussion, saying, here's a choice. If you have two schools, you have two poor schools. If you have one school, you've got one good school. The focus should be on outcomes, not on process. But is that going to be reflected in your party's stance as we approach the election? Well, we'll probably have to wait to find out. I can tell you that the broad thrust of our strategy will be on voluntary principles for schools having the authority to do what they think is best for their children. It will be about a diversity parental choice, and it will certainly encourage a shared future, but how that is worked out will depend upon how individual schools work. So we will be quite positive on the shared future. Can I take you back to your own school days now? What's your strongest memory from your own school experience? Well, it's interesting. You get both positive and negative. I do remember going to a school, if you went back to the earliest days, a small local school where you knew everybody. I did get the 11 plus, and I went to a big grammar school, and I got a good education, but I probably went through without touching the sides. I was neither the best nor the worst. And what I do think about schooling now is that we can do so much more to find out what people are good at. Intelligence is no longer, or intellect is no longer something that you're just given and you have to exploit. It's about what are you intelligent at, or what are you good at, and schools need to do more about all of that. And so I do think certainly, if I can just finish by saying that I discovered later on in life that I had a bent towards history and English. But when I was at school, they got me to go and do all the sciences because I could do them. And it's okay, I could do them, but it wasn't really where my heart was at. So is your overall memory of school happy? Pretty positive. It is. I mean, it wasn't absolutely the best days of my life. Those things developed later on, but it was certainly a very benign environment. And I can say this,
I'm absolutely convinced about the need for education, that people should value it, that everybody does it. It is the one enduring competitive advantage that you get. And certainly I was not let down by the school. I just know that maybe if they'd asked some different questions, they might have done. My career and my life might have gone in a different trajectory.
Might not be talking to you now.
Well, there is always that. If you finish, I mean, I was talking about this yesterday to somebody that I do remember going down to a trip to the Mourns, and we didn't come from a very well-off family at the time, and so it was a big sacrifice to go down, and we had 34 people for 30 places. There was a ballot. I was pulled out, and of course, as a fourth former, this was tragedy, you know, fighting back the tears, and but I was going out, didn't care, didn't want to go anyway. And they sent me, they eventually got together and said, no, we better send him down, you know, it's bad to victimise people. And I do remember being put out in a canoe because it was very wet, very rainy, very windy, and they tied a rope onto the back of the canoe, and we had to sail out, sail back, whatever, and of the 34 that went, only one of us actually made it back without capsizing, and that's because I had a point to prove. And actually, that is what shapes your future in anything in life. The school is so formative that you do end up going, no, I'm determined to make life equal for everybody and to give everybody an opportunity, because, you know, that was important to me when I was younger.
Thank you very much.